video, we're going to expose some of the most shocking secrets of baseball's rulebook. You'll be amazed by some of the bizarre, obscure, and hilarious rules that exist in the game you love. Let's start with a rule that dates back to the 19th century, when baseball was still a young and developing sport. Did you know that batters used to have the right to request a low or high pitch from the pitcher? That's right. From 1867 to 1887, batters could choose their preferred strike zone before every at-bat, and the pitcher had to oblige. Imagine Mike Trout telling David Price exactly where he wanted the ball. That would make hitting a lot easier, wouldn't it? Well, not surprisingly, this rule was eventually abolished as pitchers gained more control and variety in their pitches. Another rule that sounds absurd to modern fans is the once bounce rule. The rule allows fielders to catch fly balls and foul balls on one bounce and still record an out. This rule was in effect until 1864 for fair balls and until 1883 for foul balls. The reason behind this rule was to protect the players from catching a very hard ball with their bare hands. As gloves were not widely used back then, it also made the game more similar to other popular games at the time like cricket and jacks. However, as gloves became more common and players became more skilled, the once bounce rule was gradually phased out. Speaking of cricket, baseball also borrowed another rule from its British cousin, the underhand pitch. Until 1883, pitchers were required to throw underhand with a staff and straight arm motion. This was meant to make the game more of a contest between the batter and the fielders rather than the batter and the pitcher. However, some pitchers started to experiment with different arm angles and speeds, and eventually overhand pitching was allowed. The first man to break the mold was Tommy Bond, who raised his delivery just above the waist in the mid-1870s. He was followed by others who threw overhand, sidearm, or even submarine. Another rule change that was intended to boost offense was the flat bat rule. From 1885 to 1893, batters were allowed to use bats that had one flat side, like a cricket bat. The idea was that this would give them more control over where they hit the ball and make it harder for fielders to catch it. However, this rule did not have much effect on scoring, and it also made it easier for pitchers to throw curveballs. The flat bat rule was eventually scrapped, and bats were required to be round on both sides. Moving on to some more recent rules, did you know that there is a limit on how many times a manager can visit the mound during a game? According to Rule 5.10.1, a manager or coach can only visit the same pitcher twice in one inning or 3 times in a game. If they exceed this limit, they must remove the pitcher from the game. This rule was introduced in 2018 as part of MLB's efforts to speed up the pace of play. However, there are some exceptions to this rule. If a manager visits the mound after an injury or potential injury, or after a pinch hitter is announced, it does not count as one of their visits. Another rule that affects the pace of play is Rule 5.07A2, which states that a pitcher must deliver the ball within 12 seconds after receiving it from the catcher when there are no runners on base. If they fail to do so, the umpire can call a ball on them. This rule was also implemented in 2018 as part of MLB's pace of play initiatives. However, this rule is rarely enforced by umpires, as most pitchers tend to work faster than 12 seconds anyway. One of the most controversial rules in baseball are Rule 6.01J, which deals with collisions at home plate. This rule states that a runner cannot deviate from his direct pathway to initiate contact with the catcher or any other player covering home plate. If he does so, he is out and may be ejected from the game. Similarly, a catcher cannot block the pathway of the runner unless he has possession of the ball or is in the act of fielding it. If he does so without the ball, he is guilty of obstruction and the runner is safe. This rule was adopted in 2014 as a way to prevent serious injuries at home plate. However, some fans and players have criticized this rule for taking away the excitement and aggressiveness of the game. Another rule that has sparked some debate is Rule 6.01I, which covers slides into bases. This rule states that a runner must slide on the ground and in a direct line between the two bases and must attempt to stay on the base or at least make contact with it. He cannot change his pathway to initiate contact with a fielder, slide with his legs above the fielder's knee, or roll or pop up into any fielder. If he does any of these things, he is out and may be ejected from the game. Furthermore, if his slide interferes with a double play attempt, the runner is also out. This rule was introduced in 2016 as a way to protect middle infielders from dangerous slides. However, some fans and players have argued that this rule limits the runner's ability to break up a double play and makes the game less exciting. Another rule that may surprise you is Rule 5.06B4G, which covers the batter runner's interference with a fielder. This rule states that if a batter runs outside the 3-foot lane on his way to first base and, in doing so, interferes with the fielder taking the throw at first base, he is out. The 3-foot lane is a 30-foot long, 3-foot wide area marked by 2 lines that start at a point halfway between home plate and first base and extend to first base. The batter runner must stay within this lane unless he is to avoid a fielder who is already in the lane. This rule is meant to protect the fielder from being obstructed or injured by the batter runner. However, some fans and players have complained that this rule is unfair to left-handed hitters who naturally run outside the lane because of their swing. Baseball enthusiasts may be familiar with, according to Rule 7.13, any runner who passes another runner in such a situation is automatically announced as being out, and the ball becomes dead. This rule can be enforced in different circumstances, such as when a runner mistakenly believes that a fly ball has been caught and starts to retreat to his original base while another runner behind him advances to the next base. It can also arise when a runner simply runs past another runner who is already standing on a base. While this rule may not be enforced frequently, it has occurred a few times in the history of Major League Baseball. One of the most notable instances dates back to 1926, when Babe Ruth passed Bob Musil on the bases after hitting a home run. The umpire called Ruth out, and his home run was nullified, which made this incident a memorable example of the rare application of Rule 7.13. Finally, one of the most amusing rules in baseball is Rule 8.01C, which covers the pitcher's glove. This rule states that a pitcher cannot wear a glove that is white, gray, or any color that could be confused with the ball. The reason for this rule is obvious. It would give the pitcher an unfair advantage if he could hide or camouflage the ball in his glove. However, this rule also applies to any markings or logos on the glove that can be distracting or confusing to the batter. For example, in 2012, Ray pitcher Joe Peralta was forced to change his glove because it had a bright yellow patch on it. In 2018, Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia was told to remove his black and white glove because it had too much white on it. These are just some of the many rules that exist in Major League Baseball. Some of them are logical and sensible, some of them are quirky and weird, and some of them are downright hilarious. But they all make baseball what it is, a fascinating and complex game that never ceases to surprise us. We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about baseball's rulebook. If you did, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more awesome baseball content. And don't forget to leave us a comment below and tell us what other rules you find interesting or strange. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.